To outsiders, I am both the future heir of Wang Media and a powerful movie star in the entertainment industry. A true epitome of success, however. My fiancé and my older sister have hated me for 10 years. They are convinced that I bullied their beloved Makoto, and at my engagement party, they exposed my alleged crimes to the public. My fiancé said, "He's just a scum who bullies his classmates. I will never marry him." In the live-streamed video, Makoto calmly smiled and said, "I don't blame him anymore." Looking back, the light boat has passed through countless mountains. Overnight, his fame soared. While I was vilified, attacked by extreme fans with acid, and driven to despair, in my desperation, I chose to end it all with him. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my final year of high school. Makoto, who looked much younger, was standing not far away, pouring water over his head while smiling at me. "Have you figured out how you're going to apologize to me yet?" In the next moment, I lost it. I grabbed his collar and dragged him into the restroom. Pushing his face into the toilet bowl, I laughed. "I'll teach you what real bullying is. With a filthy mouth like that. The mouth is for speaking, not for farting." Chapter 1. The last memory of my previous life was the agonizing pain of sulfuric acid splashing into my eyes. A death-like agony. Through the excruciating pain, in my blurry vision, I found Makoto with his arm around my sister, and I grabbed a cake knife and rushed over to stab it into his chest. Through gritted teeth, I said, "Let's go to hell together." When I opened my eyes again, the vividness of the surroundings stunned me for a moment, until I saw the younger Makoto not far away. He was wearing a faded school uniform, twisting open the faucet and pouring water over his head. As he did so, he smiled and asked, "Guess what? Will they believe me, or will they believe you?" I suddenly realized, this was the day when I was first accused of bullying him in my previous life. Seeing me frozen in place, Makoto's smile deepened as he said, "Have you figured out how you're going to apologize to me yet, Mr. Wang?" Haha. New and old grudges surged within me. I rushed forward, grabbed his collar, and dragged him into the restroom. In his sudden, piercing scream, I shoved his entire face into the toilet bowl. Through gritted teeth, I said, "You think you can pin the blame on me just by pouring some cold water on yourself? Let me show you what real bullying is." Makoto struggled like a madman, his arms flailing wildly like an engine running at full speed. But he still couldn't break free from my grasp. All he could do was bury his face in the dirty water, mumbling in a muffled voice, "Asshole, George, get the fuck off me, gurgle gurgle." I laughed to the sky. "Your mouth's so filthy, make sure you wash it before you go complain." Whether this was a return to the past or a post-death illusion, it didn't matter. I completely lost it. Chapter 2. In my previous life, I died on the most glorious day of my life. That day, I won my third Best Actor award, dressed in a bespoke suit, standing next to my fiancée, Willow, at our grand engagement party, which was being live-streamed across the internet. Willow arrogantly announced to everyone, "I will never marry a scum who bullied his classmates back in high school." In my incredulous gaze, Makoto walked up from the crowd. He smiled calmly and said, "George, do you remember me, the Makoto you bullied for 10 years? You probably didn't expect that one day I'd be standing on equal ground with you, but it's okay. I don't blame you anymore." Looking back, the light boat has passed through countless mountains. The live stream went viral, and his fame skyrocketed. Before I could react, a group of reporters, arranged by my sister and Willow, rushed in and surrounded me. Someone asked, "Mr. Wang, we've heard that you still have the habit of bullying newcomers on set, acting like a diva." Some extreme fans charged out of the crowd, throwing sulfuric acid at my face while shouting, "Bullying scum, die." The liquid splashed across my face, and the searing pain clung to my skin. My vision blurred, and I could no longer see clearly. I fell from heaven into hell in an instant. When I came to, I let go of him. I looked down at Makoto, lying on the ground, barely conscious. His once arrogant face was now covered in filth. I couldn't help but laugh. I chuckled. Cry, go tell the world that I bullied you. I'm waiting for the show." My voice rose suddenly. I thought of the pain of the sulfuric acid burning my face in my past life and stepped hard on his face twice. Only then did I turn and leave. Downstairs, my deskmate, David, was waiting for me. He said, "The PE class has already started for a while. What were you doing upstairs?" I casually replied, "Oh, I was just bullying the new kid." He turned to look at me in shock. "What?" I said. "The famous V once said, when the whole world thinks you're a bully, you better really be one." David asked in confusion, "Who's V? Did he really say that?" I answered, "That's not important." We walked to the edge of the playground and ran into Willow. She wasn't in my class, but everyone knew she was my childhood friend and fiancée. Willow's gaze slid past my face, subtly landing on what was behind me. She frowned and said, George, why are you so late? Oh, I heard a new transfer student has come to your class. In my past life, whenever Makoto and I clashed, she would always advise me to be more magnanimous, to apologize to Makoto, and let things slide, making it seem like she was on my side, but in reality, with just a few words, she solidified my guilt as a bully. Thinking of this, I was filled with rage. Without warning, I slapped her hard across the face. She covered her face, her expression filled with disbelief. David, standing by, was once again stunned. For a brief moment, anger flashed across Willow's face. But the next second, she adopted a pitiful look, raising her eyes, pulling my hand, and tearfully said, "What's wrong, George? Did I do something wrong?" Chapter 3. In my previous life. It wasn't until much later that I found out. When Willow was a child, she had been abandoned at a theme park by her mother and was taken in by an orphanage for a while. It was there that she met a bright, cheerful little boy. They shared the same bed, and he gave her a piece of candy. He was the only light in her life. That light was Makoto. And when he transferred to her school on the first day, Willow recognized him immediately. She had always believed every word Makoto said about me bullying him, hating me to the core. But because of her illegitimate status, she had to submit to me. She could only marry me for the Liu family to accept her as their daughter. Thinking of this, I said, "Let's break up." Her pupils suddenly shrank, and she asked, "George, why? You have to give me a reason." I raised my left hand, rubbing the places where she had touched with my right hand. Staring at my palm, I said, "I don't want to date the daughter of a mistress. It's dirty. Is that reason enough?" Afterward, David cautiously asked if I had gone mad. I wasn't surprised he asked that, because back in high school, I had been so straightforward and passionately in love with Willow. I would pick her up after school every day, buy her flowers and gifts, stay up late to bake cookies for her, looking all messy, and still smiling as I handed them to her. My favoritism was so obvious that the whole world knew. But now, it was different. The George who just entered senior year of high school was dead. Standing here now was George, the love assassin, the one who had died once. The whole day passed, and Makoto didn't show up again. I knew he still cared about his reputation. The whole bullying thing would not sound good if it got out. If there were risks, he wouldn't make a move easily. Soon, Saturday came, my 18th birthday. My parents had mentioned earlier that they would throw a grand dinner to celebrate my coming of age. But something urgent came up at the company, and they had to be late. The crystal chandeliers sparkled brilliantly. I wore a bespoke suit and walked into the living room with an air of indifference. From a distance, I saw my sister, Sophia. She was dressed in a black corset evening gown, her face indifferent as she called out to me, "George, come here." I walked over, pretending not to see Willow, who was standing next to her with resentful eyes, or Makoto, who looked troubled. I smiled carelessly. "Hey, sis, what's up? Got a present for me?" Sophia shot me a cold look for a moment, then said, "Bullying classmates, insulting friends. George, is this how the Wang family educates you?" Her voice was loud and clear, and in an instant, all the guests turned their attention toward us. I frowned and said, "What are you talking about, sis? I don't get it." I looked at Makoto, then pinched my brow and said, "Who did I insult? When did I bully anyone? I don't even know him." My sister furrowed her brows and said, "It's no use being stubborn now. When you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. Today, since mom and dad aren't here, I'll discipline you for them." Saying that, Sophia walked up to me, looked me in the eye, and slowly said, "Kneel." Chapter 4. In the vast banquet hall, countless eyes were watching the drama unfold. People whispered, "What? Bullying classmates? George really did that? Ugh. He's probably just been so arrogant and used to it that he can't stand to see others doing well." Some others said, "Luckily, his sister is holding him accountable." Honestly, Wang family's son is a lost cause. The family would be much better off without him. Under Makoto's smug and provocative gaze, I stood tall. With a smile, I replied with biting sarcasm, "What nonsense is my dear sister spouting? People who know us would think you're Sophia, but those who don't might think some ancient ghost has possessed you. In this lifetime, I kneel to heaven, to the earth, and to my ancestors' tablets." I stretched my neck and looked her up and down for a moment, then grinned maliciously, saying, "How about this? You go outside and jump off a building. I'll kneel right here and give you 3 kowtows as you leave." Sophia's face flushed bright red. Makoto, hands behind his back, feigned a concerned expression and said, "Student Wang, I know you don't like me, but bullying me is one thing. But how can you speak to your own sister like this?" He sighed heavily, looking deeply pained. Willow, standing nearby, caught the look and a glimmer of joy flickered in her eyes before she nodded sadly, softly saying, "George, if you've done something wrong, just admit it and apologize. There's no need to act like this." I widened my eyes and, frustrated, responded. Sorry, I don't understand dog barks. Could you repeat that in a language humans speak? Shut up. Sophia bit her lip. George, you're shameless. Do you even know what manners, righteousness, integrity, and shame mean? Who taught you to speak like this? With nothing but filthy words and no upbringing. I wasn't surprised by my sister's words. She had always acted superior, and the thing she enjoyed most was lecturing me. When we were younger, everyone used to joke about this being the bloodline suppression between siblings. She loved me deeply but was strict with me. But in this life, I knew full well, she simply hated me. She believed that my parents favored sons over daughters and that they only had me so she could have a brother to inherit the family business. Even though that wasn't the case, in her heart, she thought I had taken everything from her, and she wanted to prove that I was useless and that she was far superior. So no matter what I said, she would never believe me. Instead, she would stubbornly drive me deeper into shame with strong prejudice. I curled the corners of my lips into a sneer and coldly said, "Who taught me?" "Well, since you asked, dear sister, our mother is too busy taking care of Dad to have time to teach me. So, of course, my shamelessness is all thanks to you." I paused, then lowered my voice to use her most hated words, deliberately provoking her. "How are you ever going to get married with such a personality?" In my previous life, I both feared and loved Sophia. She was several years older than me and had always been someone I respected. When we were younger, our mom was busy taking care of our disabled dad and managing the company. So Sophia had taken care of me. If I did something wrong, I would be punished with a ruler on the palm, sometimes even forbidden to eat. Once, when I brought home a scruffy stray puppy, she wouldn't let the maid open the door for me. She said, "It's dirty. This kind of thing isn't welcome in our house." I had no choice but to sit outside on the steps holding the puppy the whole night. At that time, I was still young and thought her harshness was just her personality, that she had a tough exterior but a soft heart. But it wasn't until Makoto came into the picture that I realized. Sophia wasn't cold to everyone. She was sweet and gentle with Makoto. I had seen her give him hot milk, act coquettishly toward him, and even on rainy days, pick up a weak stray cat and ask him shyly, "Shall we raise a cat together?" When Makoto was drunk and said nonsense, she listened intently, her eyes full of affection. In my previous life, I had been trapped in a love-based illusion. I was confused about why Sophia hated me so much, and why my fiancé always seemed to be siding with others. But in this life, I finally woke up. I was an independent individual. Just because there was no love, didn't mean I couldn't live. Chapter 5. The birthday banquet ended in an unsatisfactory way. When Sophia and I were clashing, my mom finally pushed my dad back into the room. They politely thanked the guests and sent them all off. Makoto still tried to pull the same trick in front of my dad, continuing to slander me. However, my dad gave him a cold smile and shut him down, saying, "Sorry, this is a private family matter. Please leave now." Makoto froze for a moment, casting a helpless glance at my sister before turning to leave. Once only Sophia and I were left in the house, and after my mom had settled my dad in his room, she spoke. "All right, now tell me what's going on." Before Sophia could say anything, I cut her off. A while ago, a new transfer student came to school. On his first day, he splashed water on himself and insisted that I did it, accusing me of bullying him. Later, I found out that this person is the poor student my sister has been sponsoring. His name is Makoto. Sophia, sitting on the sofa, suddenly looked up at me, shock evident in her eyes. Surprised. "Huh, sister. I had already discovered the secret connection between the two of you." I rubbed my forehead, my tone filled with disappointment. "Honestly, it's no big deal. It's just a birthday party. All I want to know is, I don't understand why my sister doesn't believe me. Isn't it just plain dumb? Who can't do that?" But just as I thought that, my mom spoke. "All right, no matter who bullied whom, let's not talk about it anymore. If this gets out, it won't be good for either of you." Back at school, I began bullying Makoto openly. I poured ink into his drawer, laughed loudly while he struggled to read English with a thick accent. I tore apart his physics test paper, letting the pieces rain down on his head. I said, "Go on, keep reporting me." I laughed and added, "Isn't that what you're best at?" A shower of torn paper fluttered down from his head. He looked at me, his eyes flashing with deep hatred, but in the end, he could only apologize, his face full of humiliation. "I'm sorry, George. If I did anything that upset you, I apologize now. I'll change." "All right," I chuckled. "Just you existing is enough to make me unhappy." I raised an eyebrow. "How are you going to change? Should you just die now?" He was speechless, unable to say a word. He could only continue begging for my forgiveness. It was the first time I realized how satisfying it felt to be the villain. Of course, he went and told the teacher. The teacher called me to the office. With a dazed look and a frown, I recounted what had happened at the birthday banquet. Finally, I took out a medical certificate from the hospital and said, that day, because of his rumors, my sister humiliated me in front of so many people. I lie awake at night thinking about it. I'm tormented and can't sleep. My chest hurts, and even when I manage to sleep, I wake up startled from nightmares. I'm still seeing a psychologist, taking medication. The doctor says I have severe depression now. In the end, the teacher had to console me. Everyone could clearly see how much I despised Makoto. David, still confused, asked, "Why are you targeting him like this? Did he do something bad to you?" I turned to him and smiled. Can't it just be because I'm a bully who, with my family's money, looks down on a poor new student? He looked at me, speechless. Give me a break. He shot me a glance and said, if you were that kind of person, why didn't you bully me? My family is much poorer than his. On our first day as friends, you bought all my stationery for the next 3 years of high school. If you want me to believe you're bullying classmates, it's easier to believe I'm Jesus. I still get that much, at least. Yes. This is something everyone understands, but my sister and my fiancé don't get it. I curled my lips into a smile, but there was no joy in my eyes. Chapter 6. A month later came the school's centennial celebration. In my past life, Makoto performed a piano solo at the celebration event. He was noticed by the special admissions officer present and granted the only special admission slot. As for me, I had been practicing the guitar for over 10 years and had prepared a song. But then Willow came to find me. In the campus bathed in the setting sun, she slipped into my arms and gently said, "Can you not go, George? I'll be jealous. I only want you to sing for me." Back then, I was an idiot. I was so pleased with myself, thinking this was a sign that she liked me. So on the day of the performance, I didn't go. Instead, I stayed in an empty classroom, singing her one love song after another. When the last note faded, distant cheers roared from the auditorium. Willow heard it and suddenly smiled. She was always gentle and reserved in front of me. Even her smiles were light and fleeting, like there was a fog between us. But this time, I saw her emotions shift so clearly. I put down the guitar, cluelessly asking, "Are you happy?" She paused before saying, "Yes, I'm happy." At the time, I thought she was happy because I was singing just for her. It wasn't until much later that I realized she was happy because Makoto's performance had been a huge success. The only light in her life now had a brilliant future ahead of him. I submitted the program I had prepared long ago, but this time, it wasn't a solo guitar performance. I pulled together everyone in the class who was interested in performing, and we put together a group performance. I paid for everything myself, hired the best instructors, bought the most expensive costumes, custom-made the best instruments and props, and even booked the most luxurious dance troupe. Compared to that, Makoto's piano solo seemed too simple. I don't know what he complained to Sophia about. That evening, when I came home after school, she stopped me in the garden. "George." My sister looked at me with a blank expression. She said, "For the school celebration performance, withdraw your program." I smiled and asked, "Sophia, are you barking?" She snorted coldly and said, "Don't think I'm negotiating with you." A hint of icy mockery flickered in her eyes. She added, "If you insist on going, the consequences are on you." I stopped in my tracks, staring into her cold eyes and said, "Sis, does your crush, who's been learning piano for over 10 years, not have the confidence to beat me if we're competing on the same stage? What a waste." Chapter 7. A few days before the school celebration performance, Willow found me. She said, "George, what happened last time was my fault, but you blocked all my contacts and wouldn't meet with me. I don't know what happened. George, do you have a misunderstanding about me? Or have you fallen for someone else?" As she spoke the last few words, her voice even carried a hint of sharp pain. She spoke with grievance. "But you said yourself that you would always love me the most." A rush of anger mixed with sharp pain suddenly surged in my chest. In the past, I had genuinely liked her for so many years. She said she didn't want me to act as a couple with female actresses, so I gave up many golden opportunities from famous directors. She said Makoto came from a poor background, had been bullied in the orphanage, and told me not to hold his offenses against him. So, I forgave his offenses again and again. I just wanted to exchange sincerity for sincerity, but what I got in return were years of slander and hatred from them. At this moment, I suddenly didn't want to bother with any facade anymore. I reached out and grabbed Willow by the collar, shoving her hard against the tree behind her. She gasped in pain. Unable to speak before slap, I struck her face with a resounding slap. I held nothing back. Her pale face immediately turned red and swollen. I leaned close to her and said slowly, "You've known Makoto for a long time." "I've known. You like him, don't you? Why are you here crying in front of me? Is it because you wanted to use me to pave the way for Makoto? You really are just like your mother, who loves to play the third wheel." Disgusting. When the last word left my mouth, the emotions in her eyes brewed like a storm about to break, but she couldn't say another word. I sneered, released her, and turned to leave. That night, I had a dream. A rare dream of what happened after I died in my past life. The knife plunged into Makoto's chest, and I died in intense pain. He was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Outside the emergency room, Willow choked out, "You said he wouldn't get hurt." Sophia rolled her eyes and coldly responded, "I already agreed to let you be the mistress. Living together with the three of us, what more do you want? You're just a bastard. Without me, could you even enter the Liu family door?" Willow trembled slightly, furrowing her brows in rebuttal. "Did you help me?" Clearly, it was. She stopped halfway, pressing her lips together. Sophia snorted coldly. "Yeah, my brother helped you, but he's dead now. The person who killed him is still someone you contacted. Have you forgotten?" Willow stood silently, staring. The red light above the operating room door was flashing. Moments later, Makoto was wheeled out. The doctor said, "The patient is still in critical condition." Willow's gaze briefly passed over his pale, bloodless face. And then, with slow, deliberate words, she said, "I haven't forgotten. I never regret it." I woke up suddenly from the dream, stumbling to the bathroom and dry heaving into the toilet for a long while. When I straightened up, I supported myself on the counter and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My bloodshot eyes were filled with hatred. "Never regret it," I murmured. "It's okay. This lifetime, you'll regret it. Regret being born. Just wait and see." Chapter 8. On the day of the school celebration performance, I ran into Makoto by the artificial lake on campus. He looked triumphant, with an expression that clearly said he was destined to succeed. He said, "George, do you really think the status of the Wang family's heir will always protect you? You've bullied me for so long. Do you really think I won't fight back? I'll make you pay 1,000 times over, even if you know about Willow and me. So what? She loves me, and your sister loves me too. You're just a useless loser, relying on your parents for everything." He rambled on, but I just smiled and responded with one line, "Is the toilet water tasty?" Then, seeing his face shift in shock, I turned and left. In the evening, the fiery sunset stretched across the sky. I changed into my performance outfit with the rest of the team and was heading toward the backstage area with my instrument. Halfway there, I suddenly realized that the prop I had prepared for the finale curtain call was missing. Did I leave it in the rehearsal room? I thought back carefully and decided to go back and find it. David asked, "Do you want me to come with you?" I replied, "No, it's not much. I can handle it on my own." I smiled and said, "You guys go on ahead and get ready in the back. Then, talk to the stage manager about arranging our props." The vast building was eerily quiet. I took 2 steps at a time, rushing up the stairs, but as I was about to reach the rehearsal room floor, I suddenly stopped. There was someone standing a few steps away. The golden red light of the setting sun filtered through the window, casting its glow on only part of her face. In the shadow, her cold and malicious eyes flashed. It was Willow. Before I could process what was happening, she suddenly lunged at me. My mind froze for a second. By the time I reacted, my body was already light, and I fell backward. Behind me was a flight of high stairs. I landed hard on my back, rolling down the steps. Pain overwhelmed me as I hit the iron railing, and I felt a sharp crack in my ankle. I couldn't move. Willow walked over, crouched down beside me, and looked at me with that innocent yet aggrieved expression in her eyes. She said, "George, don't blame me. You've had everything since birth. Even if you miss this opportunity, there are plenty of other paths for you. But Makoto and you are different. He's already done his best with the effort he can give." With that, she raised her foot and stomped down on my leg. In that instant, the scene from my dream flashed in my mind. She was standing outside the hospital room with my sister, looking at Makoto, who had been wheeled out of the emergency room, with eyes filled with tenderness and affection. But when it came to me, her voice was indifferent as she said, "I've never regretted it. 15 crucial years of my life, the most passionate and sincere love, and it was all tied to a person like this." I suddenly burst into laughter. Just before her foot could land on my calf, I swiftly pulled away. I cursed, "Bitch." The pain from my sprained ankle made my breath hitch, but I still seized the moment while Willow was still processing what happened. I grabbed her hair and slammed her head into the railing. Through gritted teeth, I spat, "Trash, you want to harm me again? You're dreaming." Willow's head hit the railing hard, making a loud thud. Her forehead collided with the sharp edge, and fresh blood immediately flowed out. It trickled down her cheek, dripping onto her clothes. "George." I took a couple of deep breaths, releasing her hair and standing up. The pain from my twisted ankle was relentless, but I didn't care. I looked down at her eyes, which were clouded with pain, and slowly began to smile. I said, "What a devoted girl, willing to sacrifice herself just to have me ruin myself here, to secure a future for your beloved. Is this the warning Sophia gave me? You two had already planned who would be the dominant one, and who would be the submissive, right? How disgusting, how stupid." I took off my shirt and began wiping the blood off her face, until the white fabric was stained and splotchy. Then I threw her down on the ground and, with the darkening sky, ran toward the grand hall. From afar, I could hear the distant, melodious sound of a piano. Makoto was indeed playing the same piece from my past life, Clair de Lune by Debussy. He was sitting at a pure white piano, dressed in a custom suit. The stage was completely dark except for a single spotlight shining on him, making him appear like the only star in the night, just like in my past life, when he had climbed over my blood to reach the top during my engagement banquet, so dazzling that it almost blinded me. I ran down the narrow aisle between the rows of seats. I pushed past the security guards and the host who tried to stop me. I jumped onto the stage, standing in the one spotlight. I kicked Makoto over and punched the piano. In his shocked and dumbfounded gaze, I shouted in rage, "Play, play, play. I'll make you play. Send someone to harm me, and you still dare to sit here playing piano. Damn it." Chapter 9. Of course, I knew. In the audience, there was a special admissions teacher. In my past life, after Makoto played Clair de Lune, he was contacted by the teacher at the end of the performance, offering him the only special admission spot. Makoto accepted. This was just the first step toward his brilliant future. Later, with Sophia's help, he was taken under the wing of a legendary music master, becoming his disciple. As for me, due to a film role, I was cast as a genius pianist with autism. Through my agent's arrangement, I went to study under that same master, but just as I had a brief encounter with Makoto. When I returned home that evening, Sophia was waiting for me at the door. She looked at me with disdain and asked, "George, when will you stop? Just because you can't compare to Makoto. You hate him so much. You even rip up the music sheets he gave the teacher. You're such a rotten person." I stood there in confusion for a few seconds, trying to process. But before I could defend myself, she interrupted me. "You're just a little liar born from an old con man. Full of lies. I won't believe a single word you say." Amid the murmurs of the audience, I heard someone scream, "Blood. Look, he's covered in blood." My shirt was stained with a mix of blood and dust. My body was covered in grime, and my ankle was swollen and bruised. Every detail of my appearance confirmed the truth of my words. Makoto, still holding the piano bench, struggled to get up. The look in his eyes was filled with deep hatred and resentment, but eventually, he returned to his usual polite demeanor. He said, "Wang, I don't know what you're talking about. There must be some misunderstanding, but this is my performance, and out of respect for the audience, you shouldn't have barged in like this." Sophia angrily stood up from the audience, yelling at me, "George, are you crazy?" I ignored her, shoving Makoto aside and sitting down at the piano. I began playing Beethoven's Symphony No. 5. In my past life, I had practiced this piece for 3 solid months, learning it thoroughly to play it authentically in the film. Though I wasn't a virtuoso, it was enough for this moment. The stirring music filled the empty hall, resonating with the faint hum of electricity. When the piece ended, I turned to face Makoto, my voice firm and clear. "You ruined my engagement party. You sowed discord between my family and me, spread rumors about me in front of my family and friends. Those were small matters. I'll repay you in my own way. But when you had Willow push me down the stairs, trying to break my leg just to keep me off this stage," I paused for a moment, watching his face go pale, then sneered, "Your piano is the one thing you take pride in, and yet you can't even compete with me in this. Did you lose all confidence?" The stage erupted in chaos. Eventually, the teacher in charge of the school celebration performance dragged Makoto and me off the stage. The host quickly came forward to regain control. Our group performance was up next. I passed by the other performers backstage. David rushed over and grabbed my hand, asking, "George, what happened to you? Are you injured? I should have gone with you." I smiled. "I'm fine." I patted his shoulder and reassured him. "Go on and perform. You've practiced so hard. Just give yourself a satisfying result." The first place in the school celebration performance would earn a 100,000 yuan prize. From the start, this performance wasn't for me. As I watched them walk onto the stage, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Then, as the intense pain and exhaustion surged through me, I closed my eyes. My consciousness slipped into darkness. I woke up in the hospital. That night, Sophia stormed into my room, fuming. "Crazy, George, you're insane." She had wanted to push her beloved Makoto into the spotlight, to see him shine. But I understood her deeper intentions. Destroy a man, then raise another man in her attention. It was the ultimate proof of her superiority over men, wasn't it? But how could I give her such an opportunity again? I laughed. So what? He didn't even finish his piece. The plot to break my leg got exposed, and now he won't get into the school he wants. I suddenly remembered something. Oh right, your accomplice Willow is still lying on the floor of the complex building. If you get the chance, make sure to send her to the hospital. I grabbed the blanket and laughed. causing my sprained ankle to throb painfully, distorting my facial features. In the reflection of her pupils, I saw myself now. It was like madness. Or maybe, from the day I died in my past life, I had already become a madman. Sophia instinctively took 2 steps back, but the terror in her eyes was fleeting. She quickly regained her usual cold, high and mighty demeanor. She said, "Does it matter, George? Even if Makoto fails, you still haven't succeeded. Not only that, your crazy, delusional appearance was fully captured on the cameras. This time, you can't just fake a diagnosis and get away with it. The school has already contacted our parents and is preparing to expel you." But the next second, ha ha ha, I laughed loudly. "Expelled? Do you think I care about that? Sophia, don't forget, I'm a Wang." Just like Willow said, if this path is closed, I still have many others to take. From the start, my only goal was to bring Makoto down. That's it. I thought to myself, the slanders he made against me in my past life, I would make them all come true. The path he walked in his past life, I would block one by one. Our debts aren't paid yet. Makoto. Chapter 10. Under the eyes of the public, I caused a scene at the school celebration and even hit Willow and Makoto. The incident of me bullying Makoto at school also spread online, triggering a considerable public controversy. The dispute between the rich and the poor, whether 10 years ago or 10 years later, always generates enough buzz. The difference this time, though, was that because I spoke clearly on stage, with my disheveled appearance, and the extreme anger and madness in my fate, many people started to side with me. One netizen commented, "Maybe it's not just the rich bullying the poor. His music doesn't seem like the type of person to do that." Another replied, "I'm laughing. The person above must be a paid commenter, using music to predict someone's character." Someone else added, "Forget everything else. Just look at his state. His ankle is swollen like a loaf of bread, covered in blood. Who bullies others and ends up like this?" Yet another person commented, "Forget everything else. This guy's mental state is 8 versions ahead of the times." Finally, David and my other close friends started engaging with netizens. "My brother Wang is a man of principle. He's not like what you're saying. It was Makoto who provoked him first." The online debate escalated. During the days I stayed in the hospital, I had no idea what Sophia had told my mom. In any case, when I was discharged and returned home, she looked at me with a cold expression and said, "It's been a while since I've kept track of you, and you've become this lawless. Since your school won't let you continue studying, why not go abroad, lay low for a few years, and come back once things calm down?" I wasn't surprised at her attitude. She was very biased towards Sophia. The reason seemed simple: I was born through a difficult delivery, which had already marked me with a sense of guilt. Back then, my sister had been easy to raise, never crying or causing trouble, which led my mother to believe raising a child was simple. She had suggested to my father to have a second child so we could look after each other. This was her idea, but after I was born through a difficult labor, she insisted that my father had wanted a son to carry on the Wang family name. Otherwise, she wouldn't have suffered through childbirth. She said I was a debt to her, and that I owed my sister. So when the engagement party incident happened in my past life, my mom knew everything. But she never told me until I died. But honestly, I didn't care. I tugged at the corner of my lips and said, "All right, sounds good." I was thinking of going abroad to study finance, major in business. Both of them froze for a moment. When my mother looked at me again, there was a layer of deeper meaning in her gaze. Chapter 11. My school application was quickly processed. Willow's injuries were far more severe than mine. Even after I recovered, she was still lying in the hospital. When David came to visit me, he said, "I heard Makoto went to see her." He comforted her, saying it wasn't her fault. "It's because you're too heartless. They're a pair of fools. They wanted to break your legs." "How is that heartless on your part?" I glanced at the fruit basket in his hand and said, "That's really expensive, isn't it? You guys can keep the bonus for yourselves." He sighed and replied, "It's fine. Everyone knows you're going abroad, so each of us chipped in a bit and had me buy it for you." He placed the fruit basket on the table, took a deep breath, as if making a decision, and said, "George." I responded, "What?" He said, "I've always felt like you know something I don't. Ever since Makoto transferred here, something changed. I don't know how to explain it. If you don't understand, just consider me rambling." He leaned in carefully and gave my shoulder a soft tap. He said, "Man, come back soon. When you return to the country, we're still friends." The night before I left, I was pushing my dad's wheelchair, sitting with him on the balcony, where the evening breeze gently blew. He looked at me, as if hesitating to say something. I held his hand, looked into his eyes, and said, "Dad, don't worry about me. In my past life, my dad died in a tragic accident caused by falling debris when he was still around. Even though my mom was biased and Sophia was always against me, she never dared to attack me directly. As I thought about it, A sudden chill ran through me. In my past life, towards the end, Sophia had become like an obsessed fangirl, almost going crazy over Makoto. The accident that killed my dad happened when Sophia had pushed him out for a walk. Could there have been more to this accident than met the eye? I tightened my grip on his hand without realizing it and said, "You must stay safe and take care of yourself." After a pause, I added, "You have to be careful of Sophia," he replied. "George, you seem different somehow." My dad stared at me blankly and sighed. He said, "In the end, I failed as a father. If I hadn't had that car accident and handed the company over to your mother, you wouldn't have to be going down this path." Then, he sighed again, gritted his teeth, and scolded me. "If I weren't so limited, I'd stop you from getting involved with that Liu family's illegitimate daughter." What did I tell you back then? I said she had ulterior motives. I told you to look at her carefully, but you insisted on arguing with me. You said she was a good person and called me old and senile. Look at you now, after all your flattery. You have nothing left. For your birthday, I had your mother transfer some shares to you, and you embarrassed me by saying you weren't interested in managing the company. You said your sister should take over. You made me so angry. I hoped you would be smarter and more decisive, but if this is the painful price you had to pay to learn, I'd rather you stay foolish forever. Sigh. I was really foolish in my past life, always assuming the best of others. That's why I let Makoto deceive me countless times and never truly took action against him. In the end, I died at my own engagement party. I rubbed my eyes and chuckled lightly. Don't worry, Dad. This cruel world of the strong eating the weak, only fools get eaten. I thought to myself, it's a shame. I only understood this lesson after dying once. Chapter 12. The year I went abroad. I was 18. Everything around me and everything I encountered was completely unfamiliar. But I didn't feel scared at all, because I knew too much about what was going to happen. Though the details were unclear, the key turning points were enough for me to do a lot. The most important one, though, was 2 years later. In my past life, when I turned 20, Sophia had partnered with a man named Kevin in San Francisco. He controlled the most advanced core technology. Over the next 5 years, Kevin helped Sophia take full control of the Wang family business. Step by step, I invested the money my father gave me into the stock market, using a bit of my past life's remaining memories to multiply my initial funds several times over. Meanwhile, at school, I spent double the time on courses while also using that money to invest in several companies that, in my past life, eventually made it to the Fortune 500 list. At that point, most of them were still in their infancy. During this period, David contacted me many times. Every week, without fail, he'd call to tell me how much the brothers missed me since I left. He also mentioned how much better life had been with the bonus they received. He said, "Recently, C University held an independent admissions interview. Makoto applied, but he got rejected. It was hilarious. The teacher in charge of the interview was actually at our school's anniversary performance. She said, Makoto's rendition of Moonlight Sonata was so muddled, it didn't even come close to your fate. Ha ha ha. The look on Makoto's face when he came out, it was priceless. And I got the results from the college entrance exams, first in the school, third in the city. When I received that message, I was in the middle of preparing for my double-degree final exams, completely overwhelmed. But I couldn't help but smile sincerely. I replied, "Congratulations." He responded, "George, I'm still waiting for you to come back so we can be brothers again." My dad also often called to update me on Sophia's recent activities, asking how I was doing abroad and if I had enough money. Then, when I'd mention my current situation, he'd sigh in relief but also with a bit of helplessness. He said, "Remember to balance work and rest. Don't push yourself too hard." He added, "If you need any help, don't hesitate to ask. Don't feel embarrassed." So I told him Kevin's name and some other details I remembered and asked him to help me investigate the person. I said, "Make sure to keep this from Sophia." I arrived in San Francisco a month earlier than Sophia. Outside the school, as I was about to ask someone for directions, I suddenly saw a familiar face on the lawn not far away. It was Kevin, looking several years younger. He was standing in front of a tall, thin girl with short hair and glasses, who was staring at him coldly. The girl said, "That's my research. Who gave you the right to take it and negotiate a business deal without my permission?" Kevin smiled awkwardly and said, "What do you mean, yours and mine? Didn't we both work on it together?" The girl replied, "The idea was mine. The experiments were done by me, and you just helped out for a while, recording some data. How can you think you have the right to handle my work?" The girl wasn't backing down. Upon hearing her words, Kevin's expression darkened. He said, "Anna, don't go too far. We're about to graduate. Aren't I thinking about our future? What's the point of holding on to it yourself? Shouldn't we find a reliable company to collaborate and develop it to maximize the benefits?" Anna responded, "I'll say this one last time. It's my research." The girl, named Anna, stared at him coldly. She said, The patent is in my name. You don't even understand the core technology. And you're talking about finding someone to help develop it. As long as I'm alive, that'll never happen. Also, we're breaking up. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. She turned and walked away. Kevin stood there, staring at her retreating figure, his eyes slowly growing colder. In his pupils, a glint of cold murderous intent seemed to flash. I stood there, suddenly enlightened. In my past life, I had once overheard my mom asking Sophia how she managed to get someone like Kevin under control. At that time, Sophia had smiled faintly and said, "Because he needs my help." But what was even more important, in my past life, I had never heard of Anna before. Chapter 13. I found a way to meet Anna. In a cafe far from their school, she sat down across from me. She got straight to the point. "Mr. Wang, I know why you're here, but I'm not selling my work," I replied. "Why not?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Currently, it's only a semi-finished product." I froze mid-motion, the cup almost to my lips. She continued, "I know that business people care about commercial value, but I don't. I only care about the results I'll achieve in the end. How it can change human technology. To me, that is what truly matters." I stared at her intently. When she spoke about her ideals, her plain face radiated an indescribable, almost blinding brilliance. She was a remarkable girl, and she should have been a great scientist whose name went down in history. But in my past life, because of others' selfishness, she died in a foreign country. Like a speck of dust lost in the wheels of history. She said, "Mr. Wang, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving." Suddenly, I reached out and stopped her. I looked at her earnestly. "Miss Anna, I'm willing to provide all the funding and resources you need for your research, and in return, you only need to help me with a small task. Once you have the finished product, your results will still belong to you, and history will bear your name. How does that sound?" The day I returned to my country, the first snowflakes fell, covering the ground. As I wheeled my suitcase out of the airport, I immediately spotted an advertisement beside me. It was a poster for a movie starring Makoto. Over the years, while I was abroad building my company to rival Sophia, who was gradually taking over Wang's, she hadn't been idle either. After failing the special admissions process, and her interview rejection, Makoto was still sent into a film academy by Sophia and successfully debuted in the entertainment industry. She really was as persistent as ever. I sneered, then got into the car. The car drove through the snow-covered traffic, heading straight to the company building. 3 days later, the bidding event was another crucial turning point. Anna and I spent 3 days in the office, ensuring the plan was optimized to perfection. Then, at the public bidding event, we secured the contract without any surprises. When the winning company was announced, I stood up from my seat and met Sophia's shocked gaze. "George," I smirked. "Long time no see, sis." At the end of the event, she chased me down the hallway and blocked me. With disbelief still in her voice, she asked, "Rainy season is your company. You hit Anna after she went missing, didn't you?" I laughed. Calm down, Sophia." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, hit her? You and she don't even know each other. Why are you so obsessed with finding her? Don't tell me you're planning something illegal." Then, seeing the frustration in her eyes, I laughed and walked away. This time, I returned to the country in a very high-profile manner. After securing the contract, I began socializing widely, meeting many notable figures in the business world, holding exclusive rights to Anna's patent and having just snatched a major project from Wang's. Everyone treated me with the utmost politeness and friendliness. It was something I had never experienced in my past life. Despite having won 3 Best Actor awards, people really need to control the means of production. I raised my glass, reflecting. David, sitting beside me, turned and gave me a once-over. "I feel like you went abroad for 4 years, but came back looking like you've aged 10 years, I replied. "That's normal, right? After all, when you're 18, you can act reckless because you're young. Now that I've graduated from college, before I show my fangs, I need to at least look respectable." With that, I raised my paddle and called. 2 million. Makoto suddenly turned around. Willow, sitting next to him, also looked at me. The moment our gazes met, she seemed momentarily lost. I noticed a faint scar on her forehead. I found it particularly intriguing. Makoto called out, 2,600,000. Coming back to his senses, he quickly raised his paddle and began bidding against me. Clearly, this diamond-studded bracelet was something he intended to buy for Willow. Unlike my sister, the strong woman, it seemed Makoto preferred the delicate and petite Willow. I kept bidding, watching as he spent 6 million on that bracelet. I chuckled. Such deep feelings. Willow, holding the bracelet, looked at me silently. After a long pause, she softly called out, "George Gidge." I hurriedly stopped her from calling me that. "Stop calling me that. I'm going to throw up." I exaggeratedly stepped back, giving her a once-over. After a moment, I scoffed and said. You're more capable than your little mistress, Mom. At least you succeeded in rising to the top. I wonder how you and my sister arrange your schedules. In a week, you do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and she does Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. How about Sunday together? I didn't even try to hide the volume of my voice. Sure enough, as soon as the auction ended, business friends came to ask me what was going on. I acted embarrassed and said, my sister and that Liu family's illegitimate daughter both like the same little actor who doesn't have a love-struck brain in their family. They're doing it for true love. How moving. I can accept anything. Not only did I gossip about the three of them, I also brought funding into the film industry and helped promote new talent. I stole several key roles from Makoto's past life. Sophia couldn't stand it and immediately retaliated against me. And just as I had been waiting for, without her making a move, how could she expose her flaws? Chapter 14. My name suddenly trended online alongside my company. Rainy season, founder George and school bullying. George spread malicious rumors about his elder sister, Makoto bullied. The video of me smashing Makoto's piano during the school celebration performance was re-uploaded. But this time, they cut off the part where I played the Destiny piece afterward. What's more, they contacted my high school classmates to prove that I indeed bullied Makoto back in the day. In the video, a female classmate said, yes, George didn't like Makoto at all. He tore up his homework, poured ink into his drawer, and led all the boys in the class to isolate him. But because he's a rich second generation, with money and power, Makoto couldn't do anything about it. He had to endure all the humiliation. Later, the matter blew up, and the school expelled him. Then he went abroad to study and gain some prestige. Now, he's transformed into the founder of Rainy Season. The company's stock price plummeted for several days. Several partners called me, politely asking what was going on. I knew that if I didn't provide a satisfactory answer, the partnerships would be terminated. I said, please wait a moment. I twirled the pen in my hand, smiling as I stalled. We're all businessmen here, and we know that without a 10-to-1 guarantee, one shouldn't make a move easily. Fortunately, Makoto wasn't as calm as I expected. He hated me even more than in the past life, and seeing my public reputation take a hit, he took the opportunity to jump in. During a live broadcast, he mentioned the incident. I remember back then when the teacher asked me to read the text aloud. Since I went to a village school, one teacher taught many subjects, and they only taught basic English. It's a bit embarrassing, but when he laughed, that was the first time I realized my pronunciation was off. At that school celebration, I also practiced a lot. I had been learning piano for so many years. His tone sounded calm, but at the end, his eyes reddened slightly. The comments section, whether from curious onlookers or Sophia's hired trolls, was flooded with, brother, you're not embarrassing at all. You're already amazing. It's his shamelessness. He should reflect on himself before mocking hard-working people. Some others commented, wait, did anyone else notice that he said he went to a village school where they didn't even teach English, but also studied piano for over 10 years? Doesn't that contradict itself? I couldn't help but laugh out loud when I saw the last comment, but it flashed by quickly, soon buried in a sea of text. The live stream that day broke 5 million viewers. The next day, my mother called me back, extremely angry, demanding that I disband the company and merge Rainy Season into the Wang Group. She said, after studying abroad for 4 years, and now you come back and cause this mess. You should hurry up, hand over the company, and go publicly apologize. I quietly looked at her and said, Mom, get it straight. This mess was caused by my sister, not because of my company. She snorted, but you were the one who bullied him first. She paused and then said, I should never have given birth to you. If it weren't for your father insisting on having a son, how could I have suffered so much? You owe me, and you owe your sister. You'll never be able to repay it. I was speechless. Dad insisted on having a son. According to your logic, our family must be so biased toward men, right? So why is my sister managing the company? Since childhood, you've had this philosophy of raising sons in poverty and daughters in luxury, with all the good food, the best clothes, and the best toys going to my sister. At that time, you said I owed her. Now I still owe her. Where's the debt? Soon, Wang Group and Liu Group announced a partnership. The two companies teamed up to target my company, stealing several major projects from Rainy Season. My mother publicly declared she wanted to sever ties with me, saying she couldn't stand having such a malicious son. In the company parking lot, I narrowly escaped an acid attack from one of Makoto's extreme fans. She, along with my mother, secretly discussed using my mental health records and the diagnosis certificate from my high school breakdown to have me committed to a psychiatric hospital. In both this life and the last, this was the dirtiest tactic they could employ, and now, my counterattack was about to begin. Sister. Chapter 15. Watching myself retreat without any means of counterattack, things were spiraling out of control. At just the right moment, Makoto won his first Best Actor award. and his birthday was approaching. So he hosted a grand celebration. The venue was decorated luxuriously, and he invited many of his fans, even setting up a live stream for the event. Makoto graciously thanked his fans in front of the camera. The next segment was the video greetings from fans. On the big screen behind him, a video flashed. It was a bit blurry, and the angle was sneaky, as if someone had secretly filmed it. In the dressing room on set, another actor was eating a lunchbox when Makoto suddenly kicked him to the ground. He walked over, looking down at him. "Sophia is my girlfriend. You dare to flirt with my woman? You really have guts." "Huh?" the actor replied. "No, Teacher Ito. That day I gave everyone on set a cup of milk tea." Makoto laughed coldly. "Do you even know who I am and who you are? You're too ignorant. Do you want me to have my girlfriend blacklist you?" In the next moment, he slammed his head into the edge of a table, falling to the ground. Makoto said, "Think about the bullying video you've been spreading about me. Once you're blacklisted, how are you going to make a living?" The last shot was him opening a blood packet and smearing it all over his face. "Turn it off," Makoto shouted, rushing forward to try to block the screen. But it was useless. The crowd of fans went wild. Amid the chaos, Makoto and Sophia's names quickly surged to the top of the trending list. One of the trending topics was, "Makoto bullied again." The number of comments was rising at an alarming rate. David, sitting beside me, was furiously typing on his phone. "Makoto, how are you bullied everywhere you go? Is the whole world against you?" And it quickly became the top-rated comment. One user wrote, "My God, he's so crazy. The corner of that table was so sharp. How could he actually go through with it, bleeding like that?" Another person responded, "How else could he prove he was bullied? Stop calling him Makoto. Just rename him Ito, and he can keep playing the victim." Someone else added, "If I'm not mistaken, the movie he won Best Actor for wasn't originally supposed to be his lead role." Another actor, who was quite popular, was supposed to play the part but was later frozen out. Another comment said, "Can't get the role through auditions, so he uses connections to blacklist the competition." Huh. Amid the discussions, another video hit the trending list. It was recorded at a university abroad, where a racist laughed loudly after a foreign student gave a speech, mocking his not-so-perfect English pronunciation. The person repeated, in a mocking tone, "Do you know what this is? This is standard British English, joker." Then I grabbed his collar and punched him in the face. With perfect accent, I retorted, "Since you like laughing so much, is that how you laugh at your dad's funeral?" The other guy went ballistic, yelling about wanting to duel me, but once again, I knocked him out with another punch. The person who posted the video was a fellow foreign student, who said, "I'm also from a poor village, born at the bottom of society, but unlike Makoto, our village didn't have a piano, nor did we have a kind benefactor giving us thousands of dollars a month. I'm just a kid who spent almost 30 years working up the courage to see the world, only to be ridiculed the moment I stepped out. I just can't stand seeing someone turn black into white, slandering the people who helped them." The comment section exploded. Wait, is this the George who was accused of bullying Makoto and mocking his English pronunciation? Finally, someone said it. Who in their village learns piano for 10 years? The logic is all messed up. And still, so many people believe it. Damn, bro, you're tough. Someone else commented, "The benefactor? Isn't Sophia Makoto's benefactor George's sister? Who knows? Maybe he's trying to fight his brother for the inheritance and is purposely slandering him." Then came the video from my 18th birthday. Makoto, trying to secure the funding, jumped off a rooftop and falsely accused another orphan at the institution of pushing him, using the surveillance footage as proof. There were also a series of sordid pieces of evidence, including my sister's involvement in the plot to have Anna killed. Among other illegal activities, my mother was implicated in quite a few of these crimes as well. Thanks to my father, who had saved a lot of these, I was able to connect the dots from both my past and present lives. I carefully gathered all this evidence and uploaded it to the trending list. Thanks to their previous manipulations, there was already a huge public interest in this feud. Once the illegal activities were brought to light, the situation erupted. The onlookers quickly called the police. They had no chance of covering this up now. Those who tried to manipulate public opinion would ultimately be consumed by it. How do you like this ending? Chapter 16. The day my mother and Sophia were taken away by the police, my father tossed a divorce agreement in front of me. Sophia, in disbelief, shouted at him, "I knew it. I knew you favored boys over girls. Dad, am I not your daughter? Why do you favor George so much? I'm your child too." My father sighed and replied, "Your mother favors you, so I favor your brother. This world is always fair, isn't it?" Meanwhile, the projects that Wang and Lu companies had stolen from me were gradually falling apart. Their charges grew to include economic crimes. I took over the Weekend Wang group, merging it into Rainy Season. Then I went to meet Angelica, who had returned to the Lu family. She was Willow's half-sister. Her parents were in a business marriage. she said. When I was young, I hated that woman. I thought she destroyed my family. But later I realized, if my dad hadn't cheated, Willow wouldn't even exist. She picked up her coffee cup and continued. To die at the hands of her own daughter. That's her retribution. I had contacted her a year ago to form a partnership. I promised to help her expel Willow from the Liu family. In exchange, she agreed to help me with many domestic resources. This public opinion battle, for example, was largely her doing. She asked, but I'm curious, how did you guess that her mother's suicide was connected to her? I smiled and remained silent, because in my past life, that was exactly how she treated me. Before the verdict was announced, I made a special trip to the prison to visit some old acquaintances. The first one I saw was my sister. She stared at me, glaring. I chuckled. Don't look at me like that, big sis. I know what you want to ask. Being kicked out like a stray dog. I've already been through that once. You don't think I spent all these years partying abroad, living a life of indulgence, do you? The toughest period for me. I barely had time to sleep. Between classes and the company's operations, I had to hustle to make connections. I spent my time tracing the evidence of the 3 criminals from the clues left in my past life. Their methods were so practiced, they left no room for error. I was sure it wasn't their first time. Evil people couldn't just be evil in front of me. In the shadows, they had brought forth even more darkness. I was right, I said. Sophia, Mom always says I owe you, that I shouldn't have been born, that I'm the result of the patriarchal mindset. And you believe that too, but I know very well. It's just a justification for your own selfishness. You never saw me as your brother, so you thought nothing of using any means to take everything you wanted. The sad part is, I never intended to inherit the family business. If it weren't for your meddling, all of this would have been yours. So remember this, you're not fighting me. And you're not fighting some outdated patriarchal thoughts. You're just fighting for the sake of fighting. And that's why you'll lose to your own obsession. The second person I went to see was Makoto. He looked disheveled, with hollow eyes. Through the glass, his gaze was filled with hatred, as if he wanted to devour me. He couldn't pretend to be polite anymore. He bared his teeth and asked, if you had evidence all along, why didn't you use it sooner? He said. Is playing dumb to outsmart the tough guy fun? I replied. Of course it is. Otherwise, how else could you have played the role for so long? I stood up and said, of course, it's more interesting when you think you've won. I could have revealed all the evidence earlier, but that wouldn't have been enough. I wanted him to believe he had won, that he had everything. Then, on the eve of the new dawn, I would watch everything go up in smoke. That's what I experienced in my past life. This time, it's your turn. Chapter 17. The last person I went to see was Willow. Honestly, I hadn't planned on seeing her. Makoto and I had always been enemies, and Sophia was tied to me by blood. As for Willow, after my love for her disappeared without a trace, we had no more connection, but the police told me that Willow wanted to see me. So, through the glass, I sat face to face with her. She silently stared at me for a long time, until I grew impatient and stood up to ask, what do you want from me? She bit her lip and whispered. It shouldn't have been like this, she softly said. The Liu family should have been mine, and we should have been engaged by now. I stopped in my tracks and suddenly turned around. She looked at me steadily, her eyes glinting with an unreadable light. I gazed at her face. If it weren't for the faint scar on her forehead, for a moment, I might have thought I was looking at Willow from my past life. Coming to my senses, I found it all absurd and laughable. I said, just an engagement. Why don't you mention what comes after that? You used me to be recognized by the Liu family, then teamed up with Sophia to kill me. She trembled as she spoke. But, a long, long time later, I regretted it. She continued, but you'll never know. I really wish you could know. It was absurd. It was laughable. I said. Yes, I'm dead. Of course, I don't know. I turned away, leaning against the glass as I looked at her, and said, each word piercing the silence. But even if I knew, what difference would it make? Who cares about your regret? This time, I'm the one who wins. You're the one going to hell. Willow, this is what you deserve. The winter of that year came early. By the time I left, the sky outside had already turned dark. Anna called to tell me that she would be going abroad after the new year to start new experiments at the research institute. I said, okay, and wished her safe travels. After hanging up, I saw a message from David on WeChat, saying he was already sitting at the hot pot restaurant and that I should hurry over to settle the bill. I smiled and replied with a simple okay. Outside the car window, a crescent moon hung high in the sky, casting a faint light on the dark night. After this night passes, and the moon sets, my sun will rise again.